Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps. Here's your host, Jacob Wells.
Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer. I'm your host, Jacob Wells, and today I'm so excited because we have a great guest for you. We're going to be talking about securities litigation and complex business litigation and what it's like to run Baker McKenzie's LA office. So here's our guest, Perrie Weiner. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the opportunity.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for spending some of your time with us today. Before we get into the episode, I got to ask you, since the show is called Latte with the Lawyer, what is your morning beverage of choice?
Actually, it happens to be a latte. The only unusual thing about it is when I was in the office, did not have a chance to connect with my wife first thing in the morning. But now that we are at home still, as a result of COVID-19, she brings it to me first thing in the morning to my office, and I start my day and off and running.
And where do you get it from? Is it from Starbucks or from somewhere better, or at home?
Homemade.
Homemade. Love that.
Homemade.
Amazing. So before we get into the episode, is there anything, can you just give us like a bit of an overview of who you are for our viewers?
Sure. Born and raised in Beverly Hills. Went to UCLA. Love music, played in bands up and down the Sunset Strip when I was a kid. Bands, punk rock bands. Love law, but also have always liked music, and combine law and music together. There's something called Law Rocks, which happens annually in LA. It's been in LA for about 6 or 7 years, and had several bands that play drums, and we do it for charity. And I
play drums as well.
Law band where, oh, you do? You really?
Yeah.
Awesome, right? So it's
great.
Fun.
So
it's like,
Oh, go ahead.
No, so I was just saying that we play at the Whiskey on Sunset in LA.
Oh, no way.
And we do it for charity. And it's the only way a lawyer could sell out the whiskey on a weekend, and it's a lot of fun. We have clients come, people from the firm come. It's a really fun time.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So how did you get into law from your passion for music, or do you combine the two now at all, or it's just like a side like hobby?
It's funny you ask. It's sort of serendipitously, when I was in law school, there was a charity event to raise money for the school. And so I had a rock band we called the Libel and Slander Band. And I played drums, and a federal district court judge who happened to have been an alum from my school saw me play, came down after the performance, handed me his card, and asked me if I'd like to clerk for a federal judge, being him. No greater opportunity. So that was one way where music actually unintentionally gave me a path towards law and litigation, and an opportunity to clerk for a federal judicial judge.
That's so interesting that he chose a music venue to recruit you for law, right? What did he see in you that he thought you'd be a good law clerk?
He said that the way I conducted myself on the stage and in the band showed leadership. He also felt that it was showing a attitude of giving back to the school. It was philanthropy, and he thought that if I could show all those sorts of qualities in an early age, I'd be the kind of guy that he'd like to have work for him. So it was a great opportunity and a great fit.
Wow. So did you ever get involved with any music business law or any like intellectual property stuff, or where did you go from the law clerk position in terms of law?
Oh, it's a great question. So when I clerked, it's one of the greatest things I could recommend to any young lawyer or someone in law school is if you can start out as a federal judicial law clerk, it paves the entire way for you. It's like adding a platinum accolade to your CV. And so as a law clerk, I got a chance to see trials firsthand. Law clerks are the ones who prepare the judge's law and motion calendar, write court opinions, things of that sort. And so it gave me a kind of a bird's eye view of what it meant to be a trial lawyer and litigator. So decided to, from there, join Brobeck, Flager and Harrison, which at the time was the #1 law firm in California, the finest trial law firm, and moved through Brobeck in securities litigation. Brobeck was the firm that was at the epicenter of the tech rise in the 90s, and you could not go public in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley unless you were a client of the firm. We represented investment banks as well, and it was a complete role reversal where clients were lining up outside our doors trying to become clients of the firm because they knew if they did, they could go public. And so, which was great until the tech bubble burst in the late 90s. And you're probably, Jacob, too young to remember it, but after that great climb in the late 90s, the wheels came off of technology, and all these companies that went public were starving for financing, and they didn't know how to get it. And back then, no one really knew what hedge funds were or pipe financings were, or what the acronym PIPE even meant. And so, but yet the only types of financings available for these young public companies were pipe financings from hedge funds, and they were doing what were called floorless convertible deals, which not many lawyers knew about. Almost none of the corporate lawyers knew about it. No litigators knew about it. And I started carving a niche area or specialty in representing hedge funds in the securities industry with respect to what were called floorless convertible deals, which later became known as death spirals or toxic converts or things of that sort. And I always found that it was effective to not do what everyone else had done, try to carve and take a path less traveled. And so that's what I did in securities and for hedge funds at Brobeck. And Brobeck rose dramatically, probably the first truly, first California firm certainly to go international and global. But after the tech bubble burst, Brobeck, unfortunately, after being a 100-year-old storied firm, ended up coming to an end in early 2000, at which point I had moved with my team to what was then called Piper Rudnick, which became DLA Piper, one of the larger firms in the world, and was asked to build the securities practice and was the chairman of the securities practice there, was on the executive committee of the firm, policy committee of the firm. When I joined it, we were 900 lawyers, and I sat on the executive committee as we imagined what building a global law firm would look like. And we did the mega mergers in roughly around 2007-ish, became DLA Piper. I also was managing partner in their LA offices as well. And one of the bands that I had was called Run DLA for Law Rocks, which was the Run DMC.
Run
so
DMC,
our lead song coming out was the Run DMC version of Walk This Way. And so then I had joined Baker McKenzie a couple of years ago because while Baker is a firm that's been around for 70 years and the first truly global law firm with about 7,000 lawyers across the globe, the LA office was young and new, relatively new. There were only about 4 lawyers in it less than 2 years ago, and I've grown it from 4 to 37 lawyers in the short term that I've been there. I've actually been asked, I was also asked to chair the securities practice, and the firm just recently was ranked by Chambers and Legal 500 as being among the top securities practices in the country. And so it's really fun, not just practicing law, which I love, but also building practice groups, building offices, and building teams.
Wow. It seems like you've done it all, and it seems like you kind of just fell into one thing and it led to the next, and everything just kind of happened seamlessly, from the guy recruiting you at the rock concert to falling into the securities and the tech, and everything just kind of led to another thing. Was there something that you look back now on your career, an exciting case that you worked on, an exciting case you're involved in, that was like a highlight of your career?
A number of things were really kind of fun and interesting. About 10 years ago, like right now, you're hearing about the SPAC market, which is a big thing in the D-SPAC market. And I'm actually going to be speaking at a seminar tilted towards Asia and the SPACs heading towards Asia on July 15. And about 10 years ago, I started handling a lot of these Chinese reverse merger cases. And just to explain it briefly, a lot of hedge funds in the US were interested in investing in operating companies in China, but they wanted liquidity in the US. So the way that was done was they would take an operating company in China, reverse shell merger it into a US public shell in the US, and then do a simultaneous pipe financing. And that's how they would put money into a company, but have liquidity because there'd be immediate trading on the US exchanges. And so there were a number of cases that were evolved from that. There was a lot of securities fraud cases that came out of that. I handled about 15 of them, including SEC investigations and related matters. And so it was a very interesting way to become acquainted with operating companies in China. Flew to China frequently. It was culturally very interesting, very vibrant economy. And it's happening again now because with the SPAC market taking off in the US, SPACs are a variation of a theme of these Chinese reverse mergers. And with the US markets being kind of picked over as far as target companies, the US SPACs are now looking towards Asia for acquisition targets. And so it's taking me once again almost full circle, going back towards those types of opportunities.
I think that this is correct me if I'm wrong. Are you familiar with the film China Hustle? It was a documentary, I think, about the SPACs and
it was about
that sort of thing. Right?
It was exactly about what we did back in a decade ago. And I was speaking on panels in China. It was like the United Nations with a headset on. Everything I was saying was being interpreted in Chinese and vice versa with the Chinese nationals who were in the room. And it was a real great opportunity to be in on the ground floor watching how US and China can interact in a economic setting.
Yeah, that was a wild film. I remember I think they went to like the Chinese factory. It was supposed to be like this multi-billion-dollar company, and they get there and it's like this dump, right? And they were like not being truthful. I mean, it's been a while since I saw it, but really, really interesting stuff that you're involved in. So really cool to like make the link between the two.
Yeah. And it was unfortunate because there were a lot of really solid Chinese companies. There were a few bad examples, like in any situation. But it's the economy there is strong and significant, and there are a lot of symbiotic relationships available between the U.S. and China. It's fun being the one to kind of bridge the gap culturally.
So, what was I going to ask you? So you said that this is coming about again. How has it changed recently, like what you're working on as opposed to 10 years ago? Can you clarify that like a little bit?
Yeah, so before 10 years ago, when you did reverse shell mergers, the public vehicles didn't have any money in them. The difference today is with a SPAC, there's usually $200, $300, $400 million in the SPAC on the day it's formed, searching for a target to acquire. And so it's almost like a bank searching for an investment, which is phenomenal. And so if you have a $300 or $400 million SPAC looking for a Chinese operating company, usually on the eve of the de-SPAC M&A deal, the founders will do what's called a pipe financing to add another 600 or 700 million to it. So you usually have $1 billion or upwards of $1 billion to do the acquisition. So there's the difference is that you've got ready-made cash at the time of the target you want to acquire the target in the de-SPAC M&A deal, and that's how it's different from just a reverse shell merger that we used to see about 10 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay. So if there's somebody watching this that's a young guy like me who's an aspiring lawyer who wants to uh, get involved with securities litigation and learn more about the SPACs and things like that, um, what would your advice be to them? And is there any resources that they could maybe read up on and learn more a little bit about it?
Sure. I mean, it's funny you ask because my daughter Jennifer will be starting law school next year. She went to SC, just graduated,
Mm,
and so we had those talks as well. And I always said, as an undergrad, taking philosophy classes is a great idea. Taking
mm,
classes that are heavy in reading and writing, especially writing, because writing is a
right.
skill that you definitely want to have. In fact, the two most important skills are writing and advocacy. And so as an undergrad, I would do that. She took pre-law classes to kind of give her a sense of what it would be like. She loves music, so she took pre-law classes at SC. They have a music undergraduate music degree in music business finance. And so she took law classes that talked about copyright infringement and things of that sort. And
Mhm.
so I would get involved in whatever undergraduate classes you have that are pre-law oriented to kind of give you a background in it while strengthening your writing skills and your advocacy skills.
Amazing. Um, so with everything changing now, with technology constantly developing, especially closer to where you're at um, in Silicon Valley, um, where do you think the legal industry is going, whether it be AI or any other technology um, that can help accelerate and make business more efficient? Where do you think it's headed in the future?
So great question. So the most expensive component in law, especially for litigators and for clients, is discovery. And so
Hmm.
what a lot of law firms are doing, ours included, is moving document review and document collection electronically offshore. So we, for example, have offices in Belfast or affiliates in Belfast that help with that process. But as AI becomes better, the more technology that can be introduced into the discovery process, the more cost effective it will be for clients. And we're innovating all the time when it comes to the use of AI in document reviews and document collections to be able to create efficiencies for our clients. I would say we're pretty much on the forefront of that, but I think that's where uh, AI is going to come into play with respect to law, and I think its greatest value is going to be in the area of litigation and in discovery in particular. And so, for example, I had a lot of SEC investigations and enforcement actions, and those were heavy document intensive cases. And so it's really important to be able to bring down the cost for clients. And we found ways to do that that can only be done really when you have the efficiency of a big law firm to be able to do things of that sort.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting to see where things are going and interesting to talk to you about that since you worked in that space so much. And yeah, we'll see how things play out, I guess. Um, but I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit about what you do and your story. And I think it was a pretty interesting and unique talk. Um, so if anybody wants to reach out to you or find out a little bit more about you, what's the best way to connect?
Email is great. I'm at Baker McKenzie in Century City, so it's Perry, spelled Perrie dot Weiner at Baker, spelled Baker, McKenzie, spelled McKenzie.com. Or if you just Google me, Perry Weiner, you'll see about me, but you'll also find my email address there on the firm website.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Perry. Really appreciate your time. This has been Jacob Wells for Latte with a Lawyer. We want to thank Perry Weiner for joining us today. And thanks to our sponsor, Motion Track, without a K, that uses artificial intelligence and mobile app audiences to economically and quickly gather focus group research for trials and mediations. So thanks so much, Perry, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Jacob. Really appreciate it. Take care.
passion.